Start the meeting. Good morning, everyone. We are here in Towaoc for the sub-task force meeting, and would like to welcome you here. And if everyone wants to go around and introduce themselves again. And I'm Letitia, the Water Resource Director for the tribe. Go around the table.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Yellow Eagle, Tribal Water Attorney for Southern Ute Indian Tribe.
I'm Celine Hawkins. I work for the Nature Conservancy.
Good morning, I'm Steve Wolf and I'm with Southwestern Water Conservation District.
Good morning, I'm Becky Mitchell and I'm with the state of Colorado.
Good morning, Becky.
Okay, and did everyone have a chance to review and go over the agenda today? And do we have any changes? One thing?
Yes, sorry, guys. I would like to ask to make one amendment to the agenda. We had the tribal access to clean water discussion scheduled for today, but I was unable to have a meeting with our utilities department. And I don't have that. I will be able to meet with them next week, but I don't have any additional information for that topic.
Okay.
So if we can move it to the next week's agenda, that would be helpful, or we can cover any information from you and then do Southern Utes information next week.
I didn't have much under the clean access to clean water.
Okay,
Yes, let's just keep it together.
okay.
Yeah, we can
Makes
move it to next meeting. Next meeting. Does anyone want to motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion
With
to approve the agenda.
change of moving the conversation of the clean water to next week.
Yes, I make that motion.
I'll
Second it.
second that. Oh, Steve will second.
It's okay.
And voting to approve it. Aye.
Right.
Okay, so the first portion of this meeting, we will be doing public comment. And I'll turn it over to
Yeah.
Jordan.
So I think I'll just ask anyone, would you like to give a public comment today? Public comment? Sure, I'll make a quick comment. Okay. Yeah, well, we'll start with, where do you go? Let's see where. Yeah, kind of, where the owl can see, right here in the area. And then, we'll start with in person, and then after we're done with in person, we'll move to if anyone online would like to make a comment. Please put your name in the chat, and we will go by who puts their name in first. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, as well as I'll be monitoring and let you know when you're getting close to time as well. So we'll kick off with in person here.
Good morning, Ken Curtis, the Walsh Water Conservancy. Thanks for holding this meeting locally, and thanks for letting me comment. Have a career 15 years here working with the Ute Mountain Farm and Ranch Enterprise. It's a wonderful project, and we appreciate having them on the Dolores project with us, and have watched their success over the years and want to see it continue. I'm starting to learn more about some of the Southern Ute challenges, and so I've appreciated the task force for what it's doing, bringing to light in a larger audience what we have down in the Southwest Colorado, some of the challenges we're working with our 2 tribal members that the rest of the state's often not aware of. And I appreciate the opportunity for you to bring those challenges to light and to stay in line with the state and all the opportunity as the state's pushing forward this larger task force. And I think the sub-task force has an important role to play, staying aligned with these intrastate, interstate issues. With that, big lift. Good luck to y'all. I know you've got it. big challenge, but I know you guys are the ones to pull it off, so good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Haven't seen anyone, if you would like to make public comment online, please put your name in the chat, at this point. And we will allow you to unmute and provide public comment to the sub-task force. Not seeing anyone. Yeah. It doesn't appear we have, I don't think at least. Sadly, that's public comment in the chat. I'll leave it up to the sub-task force if you'd like to continue on, and then if someone does would like to provide comment, we can come back to them, or they can submit it via writing and email to you as well.
Okay, does anyone want to motion to close public comment right now and go on with the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
That's fine, but I would suggest maybe at the end of the meeting, we re-ask people.
Yeah, that works for me too.
Okay, that works. Okay, the next item on the agenda will be potential solutions to existing hurdles and challenges to get charged to a place where they can use their water. And Lisa, do you want to start the discussion about that?
No, go ahead. I'm gonna find my notes.
Okay. Okay, one recommendation that that was brought forward from the Water Resource Committee is in regards to settlement water, is being able to use the water anywhere within the reservation boundaries. And I don't know if we want to talk about that first, or do you want me to keep further on the list?
I guess I have some questions. When you say settlement water, are we, so just water from every source that was settled, right? From the ALP, from Dolores,
Yes.
and then with the ALP project, it has the restriction of being the use being only for municipal and industrial right now. But if you were able to get it over on this side via pipeline or however, you could use it for any municipal or industrial uses, right?
Correct.
What about Dolores project? What is that water purpose for? Is it only for agriculture, or can you use it for other
Right now,
uses?
there's a agricultural component, and then the municipal component, and then for the fish, wildlife component. So they're all broken down into the three.
And then what other sources are there? I guess I'm just trying to figure out which sources you wouldn't be able to use within reservation boundaries. That would then open it up to the solution, or where the solution would make that water available.
If you want to be more specific, I would say the ALP water.
Okay,
As you know, in the Ute, Mountain Ute tribal boundaries also go into New Mexico. And so that's the reason why, you know, we want to be able, the tribe wants to be able to use the water there if we brought a pipeline from Durango. And one good example of this in another state is New Mexico and Arizona. The Navajos, they're able to, you know, use the Navajo Gallup supply water in Arizona, but it's counted against New Mexico. So I just wanted to bring a good example of that.
so you would need congressional, yeah, I think maybe you would need, so just to suss it out a little bit, you would probably need some congressional action, because within the settlement for Navajo Nation's San Juan River Basin settlement, it says that they can use that water in Arizona as long as they have a settlement with Arizona within a certain time frame. So if they don't have, if the Navajo Nation doesn't have a settlement with Arizona, then by, I can't remember the year, let's just say 2050 or 2040 or whatever the year is, that right goes away. So there's a time limit on it. And it's the tribe having to have a settlement with Arizona before they can use water through the pipeline and take it to Arizona. So you know, there's solutions, but you just have to be aware of some of those.
Right. And currently, aren't you at least seeking resolution with the state of New Mexico for your New Mexico lands?
Yes, and I can't speak about that, because you know, the confidentiality.
Yeah, that's fine, but that's being discussed at least.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know that the drought task force, this task force is not really, you know, doesn't have the capability, but recommending that to the legislator and having Colorado's support on it is important. And that's where I see it going towards.
I think, yeah, I guess I look at it. I understand where you want to use your water, but then what state it gets credited to or accounted to, I think that becomes the bigger issue on this one, but certainly understand the desire.
So would the solution be more along the lines of a recommendation to the legislature for a statement of support or support whenever Ute Mountain decides to make the request or make the move to ask for that
Yes.
congressional action?
That's
I guess I would assume, like you mentioned, it would look similar to the Navajo Gallup.
Do you mean as in it would, New Mexico would have,
It's more of a
tribe would-
temporary.
yeah, the tribe would need a settlement in place with New Mexico by a certain date or
Yeah.
something like that.
Lakeisha, have you thought through whether this is gonna take additional water court approvals, given the way that the settlement decrees are structured? Is there gonna be a water court component to it?
I'm sure there would be, you would have to go through that, but in the original intent in the ALP settlement was that tribes be able to use the water anywhere on their reservation.
But are you referring more to the beneficial use component? Or,
I was thinking that I see the settlement as having a few layers. So there's the settlement itself, there's the congressional action, and there's the court decrees that sort of pull it into Colorado's water court system. And I believe, although, looking to you all, that there's a place of use restriction within the decree. So if that's gonna be changed, could require water court action, and just sort of thinking of sequencing, like, are you asking the legislature to move before the Colorado State Water Court? Would you go to water court first? We're not, or just sort of not sure about sequence yet.
Yeah, I have not thought about the sequence yet, but and not only the place, the tribe wants to be able to change the use of it as well, so. And of course, those would have to go through the water court.
would there also need to be a change within a reclamation contract? I don't know how they're structured, but I don't know.
I mean, if there was a change, there would need to be a change, an amendment to Southern Utes contract. I assume, because right now there is no other use besides municipal and industrial.
Yeah.
But I do not think that Ute Mountain has a repayment contract in place. Is that right?
Yes, we have no
Okay,
repayment contract yet.
So it would, I guess, be put into their first contract.
Aren't there restrictions on how the facility can be used right now? Because of the authorizations?
Yeah, this isn't something that we've looked at in depth, so I think I'll, do you have an answer for that?
No, I don't know, but Peter, do you wanna chime in on it?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
He asked if there was any restrictions on facility authorizations for reclamation.
Yeah, there are actually, like, for instance, many times in the past, we've tried to use water for certain purposes, and we were told that we couldn't transmit water through a federal system for that purpose. We were told that we cannot move irrigation water through Lake Nighthorse. There have been proposals, for instance, to do exchanges with irrigation water in M&I, and reclamation won't let us move that into the Plata West system. obviously there's system limitations on when water can be pulled out of the river, et cetera, et cetera. But that's more nature's deciding that, not reclamation. But yeah, there are some facility restrictions.
Becky, do you have any comments about?
No comments on that. I just would say that we are continuing to try to assist both Ute Mountain Ute and Southern Ute. Really making sure that we don't make vulnerable any of the settlements.
And okay, I'll go to the next item on my list, and that is having tribal focus funding in the CWCB. And maybe that, I don't know, yeah.
Did you want me to comment on that at all, Letitia?
Yes, you can.
So I think this is definitely something that could have some movement. The other piece is obviously on the federal funding side, and making sure that there's flexibility specifically in the matching components or the matching requirements. And I know that as we talk about federal funds, there are matching components there, and maybe there's a way to use some other funds for that. So I think and would suggest that we actually have Nate Pearson from DNR potentially help with that, and we may want to have some inclusion from Lauren Riss, the director of CWCB.
Would we be able to schedule them for the next sub-task force meeting?
I think that this is a priority for them for sure. Making sure they're available, I think will be important, but if they can attend at least virtually, then I think that would be critical.
Okay, we'll send an invite to them for the next sub-task force meeting.
And I would say, let's be open that if it's not Lauren, that there's somebody with the financial piece from CWCB. If it's not Director Riss, that somebody be involved.
Yeah, so I'm interested in sort of the details here. So I guess, are we looking at helping state resources flow better to tribes, making sure that tribes are eligible entities, having certain money set aside for tribes, like sort of what are the what are the hurdles and then sort of how are we trying to find solutions there?
Can I have another question on top? Does Water and Power Authority have any role, not just CWCB? Because they're on the revolving drinking well fund. So,
I would say, you know, all the hurdles like that you just listed are all important to this discussion. The tribe just earlier this year applied for a technical assistance grant and it got held up in the assessor's office. I believe it's the assessor's office. Is that correct? The one that handles the financials for the state?
It's not the assessors. There's a specific department there. Nate will be able to help with that also. The
But it got,
controllers, it's the controller's office.
yeah, the controller's office. It got held up in the controller's office, and the last that I knew about it, it was still in the controller's office. They were having, I guess, a hard, just the, you know, how the farm and ranch and the tribe, what, you know, how exactly do they, you know, fit into that tribal, the tribal portion of it.
So part of it is the nuts and bolts of how to get the money flowing. There might be something that could be done on contracting to make that process better.
Mhm.
And then are the tribes feeling like they're not eligible to access things like water plan grant funding? Or are we looking for programs that are more specific to tribes? Like,
I would say something more specific and you know, just navigating through it all, I guess, is a task. And if we can just go to look to one fund, okay, we can just use this one. And
tribes have used water plant grant funding, I think.
I was just speaking to our water resources division, and I was told that they don't think Southern Ute has applied for those grants before.
Maybe I'm wrong. thought
I
they had.
don't believe they have either, and I don't, but I wanted to get that data to support it. I don't think it's, I mean, I think there hasn't been an application, so we haven't been able to address some of the maybe the boundaries of how the tribes can access. And so I think I don't believe either Ute Mountain Ute, except for the one that's in the controller's office right now, or Southern Ute have applied. But I'd want to talk to the finance department or the finance section at CWCB.
and sorry, I'm asking a ton of questions. I'm trying to wrap my head around things, and I think it might be worth exploring sort of lowering barriers to tribal participation in existing programs versus having a set aside. And the reason that I say this is that there's a lot of funding flowing through the state right now, and it could be limiting to have a set aside versus sort of opening possibilities for both tribal nations to just access the regular grant programs that can tend to see sort of big infusions of cash at certain times. And I don't know if Becky wants to talk about that. I'm thinking about like the water, I'm like trying not to use the acronyms. The WSRF got a big infusion of funds that were then eligible for certain types of projects. And I think the risk is you have a set aside and then the funding landscape changes. The tribal nations, you know, are they still eligible for the other programs? So is it better to make sure that tribal nations have the resources they need to access. All of the programs are due, we need to head towards a set aside. That's really sort of what I'm thinking about now.
I think you're tapping into something, Celine, that's important rather than creating a new program. And also, I think that could potentially be seen as like taking from existing programs, but rather than creating a new program, how about breaking down the barriers for participation in the existing program? But I think there's more than the barrier that is whether you can take advantage of those existing resources. One of the things I'm understanding from the tribal perspective is the ability to write the grants, develop the projects enough so that you could even propose them. It seems like that is one of the other barriers that I have seen, is the resources to get you to the point where you're even able to access.
So in, with these recommendations, how are we gonna work on them? Are we gonna each individually work on them, or are we gonna create a Google Docs?
Well, I think there's some significant questions to both of these that probably answers need to come from outside this group, both from state and others.
I think maybe we take between this meeting and the next, the task is, there may need to be a somewhat of a bucket list of all the funding resources available and what the constraints are. And I think we're probably not, Steve's right, we're not the right people to do that. But maybe that is the ask, to at least initially the state staff, Nate Pearson being that critical person, I would say, who's kind of funding coordinator within the Department of Natural Resources Executive Director's Office, and say, hey, what is the list of funds available, at least from the state's perspective? But I think we have to look at the federal perspective also and say, what are the constraints there too? And he may be able to be helpful with that, but I think maybe that's the task, as we ask him to be at either the next meeting or the meeting after that, and say, hey, what are the barriers? And maybe that's the things that this subcommittee can take to the larger task force and breaking down those barriers. And if they require a statutory change or legislation change or rule change, we can determine that based on that knowledge and then go from there.
Okay. Okay, any other comments about that second recommendation proposal?
I think it might be helpful for us to ask some targeted questions when we bring in Nate and other folks. And I'm thinking about some of the state funding programs have statutory sort of matching rules, and some are really set by agency policy. So I think it'd be good to know when there is a program where it's set by statute, since that can take legislative action to change. So that's one thing that might be helpful information. I think maybe a review on whether tribes are clearly eligible to be applicants, and then sort of matching requirements, and whether there's different matching requirements for tribes or whether there's the same. And the other thing I'm thinking about is really the issue of the controller's office getting contracts. And I'm wondering if there's a solution like a master contract where the terms could be negotiated once and then we could have multiple grants flowing through, or sort of a standard tribal contract that's used by the agency and sort of where that's getting hung up. So I don't know if we'd want to hear from the tribe's attorneys. I don't know if if we can ask the controller's office to come. That might be a question for Becky.
Could certainly get them a list of very, good questions up front, so they can come back to us maybe as masters.
Most definitely, and I think that Nate should probably be the conduit between this group and the controller's office.
Lynn, would you be able to, the statutory requirements, would you be able to create questions for that portion?
Yeah, I can try to come up with a set of questions and circulate them. To be clear, I shouldn't be the one researching them because there's a lot of state funding programs, and I want to make sure that whether it's Lauren or someone from the finance side of CWCB or Nate, that they have a chance to sort of look at where there's statutory requirements.
Okay. Okay, if there's anything else, I'll go on to the next one on my list, and that would be having a tribal liaison in the CWCB. I know they've recently appointed a tribal liaison to the DNR, but having it in each department, someone that could come to the tribe and, not just the principal, but someone, with the technical side that come to your tribe and help them when it is needed.
I think that goes back to kind of the last thing that we were talking about, the barriers beyond just the funding. It was some of that natural resources, technical help, and the help to develop. And remember that I think it's important that we acknowledge we don't want the state leading on that. We want the tribes leading with, and the state being able to help. So I think first and foremost, we probably want to talk to Stacy Coleman and see what she thinks on that. So, and again, potentially having Lauren Risco come may be helpful also. And I think we want to define exactly what we're looking for before we make that request or ask. Like, what is it? Technical? Is it grant help? Is it because project development is something completely different. So I think we want to define what that actually is even further, or you do. I think this is your proposal.
That, to me, at least, the general liaison to CWCB is the Southwest Director. Now,
Yep.
again, if you're looking for something different than that, maybe that's something we to talk about. But to me, that's the first line, just CWCB. You can speak to that better.
Well, I'm no longer the director, but absolutely important role. I think sort of building on what Becky said, I also wonder about, is there a need for a tribal liaison that focuses on this full time? Or, for example, what if a certain percentage of like the water plan regional position, like Laura Span's position, could be dedicated to working with tribes? I don't really know how her work plan is set up, and I don't know sort of how the legislature and the agency are envisioning that, but if it's sort of project development, we have a regional staffer who's focused on that, should we be looking at saying, hey, we'd love to have, 15% of that FTE's time really focused on tribal projects, because there's a lot to work through and there's some complexity in sort of how we get state and federal funds to tribes. So really, and I'm even wondering, Steve, if there's a role for Southwest and, as you all think about bringing staff on that could help with projects, are there ways that we can, make sure that the folks that are thinking about projects are thinking about tribal projects and the other projects that are needed for the basin?
And that's a good point. I mean, Southwest is trying to stand up sort of a larger water conservation infrastructure program right now. We're looking at some CWCB technical assistant or community navigator grants for that. And being able to bring on some technical assistance, certainly they partner with tribes on any of that stuff. So there's, not a full-time position, but there's hopefully something out there.
Okay, and I'll let Lisa.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think the suggestion about the bringing in someone from DNR to look at the different types of programs that the tribes are eligible would be really helpful. I do know that, at least from what I've heard from our Department of Water Resources, that the tribes are eligible for some of those water plan grants and the technical assistance, but it sounds like that specific grant is getting hung up due to the relationship between the enterprise and the tribe itself. So that would be interesting to find out what that is in case Southern Ute wants to apply for that in the future. I'd be really interested in hearing what that hangup is and how we can avoid that.
So question, going back to, did you apply for the grant via the enterprise? Or via?
Yes, the
Okay.
enterprise. That's
Thank
where
you.
we have the difficulties if the enterprise falls under tribal.
Okay, that helps, thank you.
Because that's at least the questions that we've had in our discussions as we're going through the discussions with the main drought task force as well, is figuring out if the programs that we're discussing are open to tribes and how much, and we're discussing a lot of programs, so it's a lot of trying to figure out what is available and what's not. But it's interesting because, as we're going through these discussions, I'm seeing so many programs out there that I'm not aware of. And it's been eye-opening for me to be on the drought task force and be part of those discussions, because it's making me aware of pots of funding that are out there that we need to see if they're available to the tribe. So I think that's been helpful for me to be a part of those discussions. So I definitely support and agree with the suggestion that we ask DNR to help us focus on what the tribes are eligible for, and if not, whether we can make recommendations to open some of those up for the tribes. And I do think that it would probably be helpful to expand existing programs rather than ask for a specific pot for just 2 tribes as opposed to the full state of Colorado. Maybe knowing what programs the tribes could be eligible for, and then asking for a larger expansion for those specific programs so that tribes can also apply. And then figuring out how, if there are roadblocks and challenges to the tribes being eligible, figuring out what those are, and we can make specific recommendations to the legislature to allow the tribes to apply for those. So I think there's definitely more work for us in terms of once we hear what those programs are, you know, figuring out which ones to specifically ask for expansion on. Because I don't know that we want to just be asking for an umbrella expansion for every single program if it's not going to fit the tribe's needs.
But from the larger task force, there's gonna be the request for more expansion within some of these CBCB grants.
Yeah,
So
I think the
that's-
one that jumps out at us from the current discussions for the main task force is for the aging infrastructure funding.
Right.
I mean, it's as we know, the PRIP is aging infrastructure, and we would love to be able to access some other funds besides VIA funding for that.
Yeah.
And besides Southern Youth funding.
Yep.
So that one is of great interest to us. And I did bring, I'll have to put it into a Word document, but I did bring the list of near-term projects that were asked for last time. During our last meeting, the projects and the amounts of, I think there were about 12, 13, oh no, about 19 project priorities that the tribe developed with VIA that could focus on specific areas of the PRIP that would really help shore it up and make the tribe less concerned about it failing completely in those areas that we expressed during the tour and during our previous PowerPoint presentations. But I can put that into a Word document. And should I send that out to the subtask force, or how would people like me to share that list?
We would love to see a copy of it.
Okay.
So, yeah. And is this the one that you quoted $12 million or $15 million, I think, at our last meeting?
Yeah, so the highest priority is for the Butzbach Flume, and that's 2.9 million.
Yeah.
And then there's a list of 18 smaller projects that the tribe has prioritized, and that entire list is $12,038,000.
Yeah, well, that'd be great to see.
Yeah. I mean, and I can even just give some examples. Like on the Dr. Morrison, one of them is just a single pipe. I don't know how big the pipe is, but it serves 2,180 acres. And the estimated cost for that is $523,000. Diversion rehabilitation for $800,000. There's a need for some funding for some headings. There's probably like 4 or 5 headings listed here. Yeah, so they're not, I mean, they're not major, but they are necessary to keep the project going and working well. So I will definitely share that list. I think there's a couple on there that the tribe is still trying to determine the cost, the exact cost, but otherwise the Water Resources Department does have a good estimate for most of these projects here. And so that was one of the big things that I wanted to make sure that I shared with the group, because one, it was asked for last time, but also just kind of showing that the PRIP is a priority, and it's really what the tribe is focused on right now to make sure it is kept in good repair, and making sure that we can keep the tribal irrigators getting their water, as well as the town of Ignacio and even the tribe's water supply for the tribal campus and domestic water. And then again, with the focus being on the PRIP, I think something that the tribe has been asking for from our representatives and senators is for their support in asking for Congress to appropriate the WIN Act fully. I think right now Congress has not been appropriating the full amount that they can appropriate. And so that is something the tribe has been asking for, is just even support for fully appropriating that amount. And that's, that congressional act is already there. The authorization for that appropriation is already there. We just need support in asking for Congress to fully appropriate that.
Do you know what that funding is? That,
The amount,
yeah,
let me look that up.
just curious.
Okay, so the act directs the Secretary Treasurer to deposit 35 million annually through fiscal year 2028. And then those sums will be transferred to the Secretary of Interior for distribution to BIA. However, since its inception, Congress has only appropriated 10 million per year. But it has the authority to appropriate 35 million. So that's something that the tribe has asked for, and would love some support on that.
Mhm. Absolutely.
That's kind of a little bit lower hanging fruit, just because that's already in place. And so we would love to have that fully appropriated.
I think that's maybe a option to ask the larger group to how do we get support on that? And what does that look like? And what does that mean? I guess specifically, Lisa, what were you thinking in terms of how to support?
Yeah, I mean, if these are recommendations to our legislature, I guess I was just thinking of a recommendation to our senators to either ask the full Congress to fully appropriate the 35 million, or I can bring it back, and I can also talk in-house with Southern U and see if there's something we can do, whether it's a letter or something like that, that we can then get support from others. I'm not sure of the best route, but I definitely think it would be great to have our own state senators supporting that request.
Becky, I'm also thinking about the Arc Valley conduit funding and the importance of the CWCB funding that sort of indicated that that was a priority for the state, and sort of the intersection of that and getting the federal funding. And so I'm wondering if there's, that required legislative action in the projects bill because it was a significant amount of funding, but I'm just wondering if there's sort of a lesson learned from another project that required a really significant amount of sort of agency action, legislative action, and federal funding. So is there something we could bring in here on sort of what the path was to get a ton of funding into the Arc Valley conduit, and sort of what would that look like with PRIP in the tribal space? I don't know if you have ideas, Becky.
I don't necessarily have ideas, but I'm supportive of everything you just said. I guess I would say.
A good point.
I guess I know they're very different projects, but I see a little bit of like, everybody's acknowledged for a long time that both of those projects need to happen and that they're expensive. So how do we take it from, yeah, everybody agrees that this needs to be done, to like, how do we actually start getting it done?
So, yeah, no, I agree. We have these things that we need, and so we've got to figure out now the next steps on how to get there. And I know in the last meeting, we talked about also whether there was a way to use bipartisan infrastructure money for a BIA project. And I'm wondering if that's something that DNR would know as well, since they're working with all of those funds. I mean, I know our Water Resources Division has looked at that funding and looked at the various pots of money and have determined that they don't think they can access those funds for the PRIP. I'm just wondering how, I mean, there's got to be a way to figure out how to access some of these large pots of money that are going around right now.
We've gone through the same thing in certain projects, other projects in Southwest. Looking at the BIL and the IRA funding that they are, and not finding a door to certain projects so that don't have a reclamation attachment or something like that. So it's been hard, for sure.
Would it make sense? I'm thinking of potentially bringing in, I don't know if it's Ernie Room as the liaison for reclamation, or if we need someone that's Department of Interior level who's thinking about sort of tribal access to funding to come in with Nate to have that discussion. I mean, this seems very much within Nate Pearson's wheelhouse at DNR, but I'm thinking of the federal side and who could speak to, you know, what we should, maybe there's a federal program that none of us are aware of. It's a really good fit. Be good to know.
I agree with that. And I think some of my hesitance is that I think, again, we continue to look at certain people in the state, whether it's myself or just one of us. No one person can know all of these things, right? And so I think we have to figure out who we bring in.
Yeah, if you can identify the right federal person on this, that'd be great, but I'm not sure that might be.
Yeah, so I know that you guys also asked about water quality and that for Southern New anyway, I just haven't had that meeting yet. So I think that those are questions I need to answer during the next meeting. Let's see, I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting questions that you had asked. Again, it's all the questions about water supply and bringing water to tribal homes that don't have it. Those are for next week. So a lot of my issues that I was supposed to hit this time is I'm gonna have to defer till next week. Something that we had talked about was during the last meeting was what tools could be modified to be accessed by both tribes related to the water banking and resilience sharing. Kevin Ryan was at a meeting with Southern Ute this past week, and I know you guys have mentioned possibly inviting him to one of our meetings, and so I just let him know ahead of time so he has it on his radar, but that we may want him to come to either the next meeting or after that. And so he just said, let him know as soon as possible. He thinks he could be here in person on the 30th if that's the meeting we would want to invite him to.
For those of you who are on the main task force, do you have a sense of where recommendations from the main task force are heading? Because part of this might be sort of like where the main task force is heading, like how do these tribal matters sort of fit?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the sense that I'm feeling, and I've kind of been as we're going through the programs for the main task force, putting it sidebars in my head, like, okay, this program we should probably talk about, but the main task force has, it's just, I mean, we're slowly going through a list of tools for both interstate and intrastate levels, and the next meeting is October 26th, so this Thursday, again here in Towaoc, right? And so I think that meeting hopefully will finish up the discussion on the intrastate tools. At least we should have more of an idea of which the group wants to prioritize, and then start working on how to make recommendations based on that list.
At least at a high level, I see there's two areas we've talked about in the big task force that this conversation ties into. One is CWCB funding issues, qualifications, because we've talked about that there. I think some of these will fit right there. And things that are more federal issues that we need to address, whether it's through, a state legislative resolution or push to the state senator or whatever, that again, some of these tribal issues will fit right into that federal box as well. So there's some overlap on some items at least.
Yeah, we haven't had much discussion about water banking. With such short timing, we go to different topics. But yeah, I can, that was my I brought it up at the last meeting, and I was kind of waiting how that discussion pans out, but yeah, I'll just waiting on whatever comes out from the main task force on that issue.
And when you say water banking, is that sort of broad, like any water conservation program, or is it like specific to one type of tool?
When I refer to water banking, mainly to what what Lee Miller brought up at the last meeting. So
I think his recommendation was to expand the current water banking statute to cover direct flows, or to include direct flow.
Yeah.
and we were, we're still, continuing the conversation on the water sharing tools. So I'm hoping going back into that, the 26th meeting.
We had a break scheduled on the agenda.
Yeah,
Do you mind if we do that so I can go blow my nose?
yes, we'll take a 10-minute break.
Great.
I don't know what was thinking with me.
Okay, we're back from our break. Lisa, do you want to have anything else you wanted to talk about, discuss?
So I don't have any other solutions or issues to talk about in terms of a recommendation. At this time, I will have more at our next meeting. Once I've met with our utilities department and water resources division. And so at this point, I have no more issues on this topic.
Okay, and so I prepared like a general list of projects that the tribe is working on, or the farm and ranch, but I'm gonna get an okay from them first before I send it out to everyone, but the infrastructure project, one is broadband for the farm and ranch. Right now, internet and telemetry they have difficulties there with that. Number two, the road to farm and ranch which we will see on Thursday when we go out there. Right now it is paved, and the farm and ranch is looking for funds to pave that road. Number three, storage at the end of the canal. And four is capacity and a grant writer for farm and ranch. And then for tribal ranches, most of them, they have issues with the current open ditches. So we're looking at piping certain sections at most of the ranches, and just cleaning existing infrastructure there, replacing roll sprinklers to I don't know if it's the correct term, the shooters, the one that
Center pivots.
not center
All
pivots.
sprinklers.
It's like a standalone where it just shoots out water. I don't know what the correct term is for that. And just repairing like I already mentioned, ditch in certain areas, and just upgrading areas. And that's just a general idea of all the tribal ranches. And let me get the okay, and I can send this out with funding that we have already, the farm and ranch has already applied to. I'll send that all out, but that's all.
One quick question, you may not know it all, but you said storage at the end of the canal. How big of storage are you, do you, any idea what's being pondered?
They're looking at 1,000 acre feet.
Okay.
I had an assignment from the last meeting and just wanted to make sure I reported back. Is now a good time to do that?
Sure.
So we were talking about range planning for the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, and the name of the organization that I was thinking of was the Indian Nations Conservation Alliance. They're based out of Taos. They work with tribal conservation districts. What was the name of them? Indian Nations Conservation Alliance.
That was relative to the range
Range planning.
that we were talking
Yeah.
about, right? Okay.
So if we don't have no additional comments, we can start towards the discussion on the agenda for the main task force meeting on the 26th. Lisa put together basically the kind of similar PowerPoint to what we presented during the first sub-task force meeting, and I'll add additional slides to the Ute Mountain Ute portion. And then what do we want to add as an update for the sub-task committee?
When you mentioned, I think you're gonna talk about reserved rights generally,
Yep.
and then the settlement.
Yes, so the first section will be on federal Indian reserved rights and those differences between those water rights and state-based water rights. And then second, we go into the Colorado Ute water settlement. And this is where it's similar to what we presented to the sub-task force. Information on the settlement, and then going into challenges that the tribes face in using that settlement water. And then I think that was it. The main information that I added that would be different from the sub-task force presentation was on the federal Indian reserve rights. And that was just to make sure that everyone had that same base of information with the with the drought task force, because I don't know how many people on the main drought task force are familiar with those types of water rights.
I assume you'll talk about FRIP
Yes.
and lack of funding for and when.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I have all of that information in there for Southern Ute. And then for Ute Mountain, you guys have the Dolores project in there.
Yeah. And then I'll add a slide about the, San Juan and Minkus.
I thought that how Steve was starting to frame up sort of how our discussion here might tie into the main task force discussion. I'm wondering if it would be helpful for the main task force to know that we're having some discussions that we're seeing some linkages for, and sort of reporting back, some level of discussion about tribal access to CWCB or DNR funding. And then that when we're contemplating state action on federal matters, that there might be some recommendations coming out of the sub-task force.
So the agenda for Thursday's drought task force meeting sets aside 30 minutes for the two tribes to present their to provide that presentation. And so but there's also, and I didn't check this time, but there's usually about 10 minutes set aside for the sub task force to give an update to the task force as well. And I'm wondering if that's where we can talk about the discussions we're having here and how they'll tie into the main task force discussions.
I'm not sure I've seen that on the agenda.
She didn't do a separate one this
Is
time.
that agenda out? Oh my God.
Yeah, she sent it.
Yeah, I should just look at it before. Let's see. Yeah, she did. So after the public comment on Thursday, there will be an update from the sub-task force report. So it'll be before the tribal water issues presentation.
Okay, yeah.
This is Kelsey. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm happy to move that if you would like to have that report after your presentation or incorporate that time into the presentation, we absolutely can do that and make that adjustment on the agenda.
I think it would be helpful
Yeah.
to move it to after the presentation, but you guys are gonna be there, so.
I think that would
No, I
be
agree. Yeah.
helpful, yeah.
Okay, so did you hear that, Kelsey? Can we move it
Yes.
to after the presentation?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then Letitia agreed to provide the update from the subtask force. But if you also want to provide some information as well, if you guys want to coordinate on that.
Yeah, we'll let Tisha go and then we'll backfill anything we
Okay.
think is important. Right, so you won't be there. I won't.
Tell you.
And you won't be in, you'll be there, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll let Pete know what we talked about here today, but I don't see him online, but he tends to watch them afterwards, yeah.
Okay, so right now I just have the linkages. Is there anything else? No.
The only thing I can think of is as the main task force is considering different opportunities and tools, really trying to help them understand why some of the complexities that may become apparent with the tribal issues presentation could affect, you know, the design of intrastate or interstate tools so that they work for tribes, just that there is complexity when you're looking at sort of how this might work for tribes, given the way their settlements work.
You mean, just, I guess more specifically, they may not allow tribes to access the different programs, funding in the different programs?
I was thinking more on the sort of tools side, but I think, yeah, fair question on the funding side too.
Becky, do you have any comments on the subtask force agenda?
Nope, I think it looks good.
Or, I mean, update? Okay.
I think I actually gave my updates throughout the previous part. I think some of it was getting Nate Pearson.
Well, I think, I mean, we are doing something similar. We're doing a similar thing to that the main drought task force is doing, right? We're looking at the programs, we're looking at the challenges and how we can figure out recommendations to allow access. And that's kind of what the drought task force is doing, going through very specific tools and very specific programs to figure out how to expand or make amendments or even create new tools to address drought. And I know this is focused on drought resiliency, but in terms of Southern Ute, the tribe is just not using anywhere near enough all of its settlement water or even half of its settlement water. So it's hard to think of ways to conserve water when we're not using the water, right? And so I think on our side, that's the difference between the sub-task force and the main drought task force, is that a lot of what we're looking at is just trying to figure out how to use the water, or figure out ways to, well, with the PRIP, it would be making things more efficient, because there is some water wastage, or it's just not efficient the way it's working right now. So there would be more efficiency once there are repairs made to the PRIP. But I think that's the struggle for myself. It's been a little bit hard to think of ways to address drought and conservation when the tribe is not even using that much water to begin with. But I will keep thinking about it and trying to figure that piece out. But I think even with repairs to the PRIP, that main focus and that priority for the tribe, it would make the project a lot more efficient. And so I think that would help address resiliency and conservation in that aspect. But in terms of like saving water and keeping it in the system right now, the tribe is not at a point where it's using that much water. So I think that's been the hard part for myself in trying to figure that piece out.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. I guess I would like to hear you, Matt Newt's perspective from Letitia. Because you have farm and ranch, which certainly has suffered from drought. I mean, are your thoughts differently along those lines? And then you've got other water you haven't even put to use yet, so.
Yes, definitely, in regards to drought, the farm and ranch enterprise, there's mainly, infrastructure funding. And as you mentioned, we do have water rights that have not been put to use. But, one of the things that tribes are looking at are ways in temporary to help with, like Powell is being compensated in the short term. But there are other barriers to that as well, and working with the UCRC and other tribes, and even with reclamation, the O&M contract, and like Lisa said, I do see how this sub-task force is supposed to be focused on drought, but tribes, they have far more issues than that in using their water.
Was thinking about the comments that you two made at the last meeting about sort of like what the vision would be, and that vision around thriving communities and doing more with less and lots of uses. And so I'm really thinking about how that gets reflected in this task force's recommendations. And, I've been thinking, do we make sure that the funding that's available can help match that vision that we heard? Like, that's the vision. If that's not the reality now, like, what's part of making that a reality?
And I know, for me, we come up with these barriers and issues, I would like to know if you guys have any recommendations or ideals for the tribe as well. That will benefit the tribes.
Could we do that next week?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
I can start a list, for the agenda items for next week, and it sounds like recommendations from the group for ideas that will benefit the tribe is the first one. And then I'll add the questions that came under the tribal access to clean water heading, so that I can address those once I have our meeting with water resources and utilities. And then the third one, well, before we move on, I think I see a hand there.
Yeah, thank you. This is Mike Preston. Just with regard to, drought and the farm and ranch enterprise. I mean, they were down to 10% water supply in 2021. And so they're really they're replanting the farm, making substantial progress. And so they're really not wanting to, I mean, they want to use the water that they have allocated to them. As far as drought resilience, there's a pretty substantial effort underway on a number of fronts. One are infrastructure investments. So we're aggressively going after kind of infrastructure improvements that are going to make the farm more efficient. And then the other thing is variations in cropping. Trying to use, I mean, they're using a lot more, I mean, a lot less alfalfa, for example, more wheat kind of as they replant, because it's year by year, it's flexible. And I think the main thing that the farm and ranch enterprise is trying to figure out is really how to adapt year by year, given the fluctuating water supply. I think another point that would be educational for the task force is when the tribes, in other words, the Ute Mountain tribe subordinated 1868 water rights on the Mancos River and to participate in the Dolores. But when that happened, participating in a federal water project like that, the tribe is tied to the storage right that governs that project. So I think the Dolores project storage right was like early 1940s. And so that's the reason that the tribes, even though they've got 1868 rights, when they try to resolve that by getting wet water, and it's overall a really good program, getting wet water from a federal water project, then they're tied to the storage right, and that's what sets the stage for the shortages that occur. So in long story short, they're farm and ranch is trying to anticipate those fluctuations and be as nimble and flexible as possible. Cover crops, they're experimenting with cover crops and a variety of other measures. And then I think Letitia had it right on as far as ALP, there's an interest in, while we're not able to access the water and put it to use, quote unquote, which, the tribe fully intends to do. In the meantime, there's an interest in receiving some compensation for the unused water. And Lisa pointed out, that it's not like, since we don't have a history of usage, then that's going to take some special consideration to work the tribes into some of those benefits. But it is being discussed certainly by UCRC. I mean, we've raised it to reclamation and everything. So that discussion is out there. It's just, kind of, I guess you'd call it a work in progress.
So it's 11:46 now. Do we have anything else to discuss here, or should we open it up to comments again?
I would just ask for any additional issues that the group wants to add to the agenda. Right now, I just have the tribal access to clean water and then the question to the full group subtask force, whether anyone has any additional recommendations or ideas for the tribes. But if you have other issues that we would like to discuss, let's add that now. Since our next meeting is only 1 week away instead of the 2 weeks, I'd like to get the agenda out on the website pretty quickly.
I'll email Nate and Lauren and see if they're available next week, but if not, the next meeting. So I'll let you know as soon as I hear something.
And are we gonna?
And I
Try
can
to-
help with that too, Letitia. I can put some pressure to see how quickly we can get them available.
Okay, thanks.
And do we wanna talk to Nate before we try to bring a federal person in, or do we wanna try to identify someone on the federal side by next week?
Let's talk to Nate at the next meeting, and then maybe in the meantime, we can work on identifying a federal person and decide whether we want to invite them to the following meeting.
Okay.
Do we want to invite the state engineer to our next meeting? And I think that was in regards to the discussion on shepherding water that Ute Mountain had brought up. Let me see. And I think we had said we wanted to have the intrastate discussion with the main drought task force before inviting him. But that'll be the Thursday meeting.
I think it'd be nice if Kevin could show up at least virtually for a little bit of the meeting. I'm not sure it's worth him coming all the way down here for a couple hours, but I guess that's up to him.
He is going to be in Alamosa. And so that's why he said he could make it for the back end of the meeting if he was invited.
Okay,
Sounds good to me.
sure.
Okay,
It's always good to have him here, I think.
so let's add that invite to state engineer.
Lisa, did you have the location of the next week's meeting?
Yeah, I can send that out.
Okay,
It's going to be in the Leonard Birch building. And so everyone will have to go to the front desk, sign in. And then I'll walk you up because it's in a key access conference room. So I'll be down in the lobby and I'll wait for you all.
okay.
And the meeting is from 1 to 4. But I'll send the actual physical address. I'll put it on the agenda and then send it out by email as well.
Okay. Yeah, but that looks like enough for the next meeting. What do you think?
We're also taking public comment at that meeting, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
once I get back home this afternoon, I will put together a draft agenda, send it out for your guys's, for everyone's review, and hopefully we can get it finalized and put on the website tomorrow.
Thanks for doing that.
And I think I got tasked with developing some questions for the DNR and CWCD staff. Should I send those to you, Letitia, or the full group?
full group. is fine.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll help me learn about the statutory requirements for grants.
6 years on the board, oh. Something about.
More than you ever want to know.
I bet now you are an expert.
Not like the staff, not like the staff.
Okay. So we've got agenda items, PowerPoint for the next meeting, and you will do the travel update after the PowerPoint.
Yes, and
Okay.
I'll have a call with Pete this afternoon.
Okay, perfect.
So we can- If there's anything else, we can open up for public comment again. If there's not anything else.
Yeah, so anyone online, we did earlier have a brief period where we asked if anyone wanted to provide comment virtually. We will open that back up at this point. If you would like to make a comment, please put your name in the chat. And we'll call on you, and then when everybody's ready, we'll have you unmute. You can provide comment. So if there is anyone online that would like to make a public comment to the sub task force or in person again? I would like to. Okay,
Okay.
well, we've got, since we have Ken in person as a taker, we'll go with Ken again.
Thank you again, Ken Curtis with the Loris Water Conservancy. As I listened to your discussion, obviously this is on the right track, coordinating with the larger task force, kind of state, intrastate, interstate focus, and all that coordination is important. But I also have to think back to our project, wouldn't be here without local collaboration between our district, the neighbor to the Ute Mountain Utes, and the Ute Mountain Utes, working through their settlement and working with the Dolores project to get it delivered. There was a little bit more of a traditional time for reclamation, big project, big irrigation, and it wouldn't have happened without collaboration with the Ute Mountain Ute tribe. So as this wraps up towards the end of the year, I guess I would encourage particularly both tribes, as I've learned more about the prep issues over there on Southern Ute, that maybe you make some local debriefing. You have Southwestern here, but be it at the round table, because ultimately the Dolores project was a success because of collaboration with local partners, which just happened to be DWCD, MVI, and the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, but there may be other important local collaboration. And if nothing else, knowledge and experience where we might be able to support some of these issues. Clearly, the things that Letitia mentioned, the fiber, the reservoir and some of these others, we're going to continue to work with you, Farm and Ranch. But, you know, that development that sprung out of the M&I portion of the casino, the travel stop here down the road. I mean, there's been a lot of improvements in the state, as I think Celine pointed out, made that one of their priorities back in the 90s. So this all came to fruition at the end of the last century and really kicked off in this century with state and local partners. And so you're focused on your task with a tough timeline, stay there, but maybe coming out of it next year, we can look for some more local ties and collaboration that would help out going forward with all these projects in one way or another, supporting you, whether it's from the sidelines, knowing that you need it, or whether it's more integral to some specific issue.
Ken, can I ask a quick question? Are you going to attend the full task force meeting Thursday? More importantly, I wonder if he can be invited to the tour to talk about the connection between farm and ranch and the Walsh project. It'd be a good opportunity to be able to ask him questions if he's available.
I'll let Letitia get with Simon. Simon is a former board member and here for a long time. can talk about our cooperation. I have no problem with his representing how we've worked with the district. If you'd like me here, I do plan to at least make the public comment of the main task force. If you or Simon would like me to be on the tour, I'd be happy to make that time available.
Okay, that's why it's a good opportunity for a lot of folks to interact and talk.
Yes, the tour is open to the public, so if you, will be meeting at 7:30 at the community center, or if you want to drive.
I'll try to make that. I'll double check my schedule and let you know. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, thank you, and I don't see any names in the chat, just making sure, so. If that's the last call, thank you.
Thank you. It was a good productive meeting today, and appreciate Celine and Steve and Lisa for coming out here to Towaoc, and looking forward to the main task force meeting on Thursday, so.
Thanks for hosting.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Bye, Becky.
Busy schedule.